Hey everyone, welcome to Shunya One, episode 175. This is yet another quick episode from us, and true to the name of the founder, we are actually of the true to the name of the company we are interviewing today. I think what you will love is that this is a company which you probably have already seen. Someone who's building a business uh, very fast, not just because he's a young under 20s entrepreneur himself, but also because his literal business is getting stuff to you fast. And so if you don't know who I'm talking about, we're talking about Adit Palicha, the CEO and founder of Zepto. uh, Zepto is the hottest new quick commerce 10-minute delivery startup around, probably in your city already. And we had a really interesting chat. I think they're solving something which no one previously thought would be a real problem, but turns out the data speaks volumes about why this is and why the people love it. So I had a really interesting conversation, and we got into some very cool stats about what exactly Zepto is up to. So let's go and talk to Adit right after this break.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Advertising is Dead, Varun talks to co-founder and CEO of Yoga Bar, Suhasini Sampath. She shares the secrets behind making energy bars without preservatives. On Voices for Water, Karthik asks Dr. Bhakti Devi, founding president Water Resources Council, about water literacy in India. On Ek Chuski Finance, Priyanka explains the concept of a financial slam book. On Pulyabazi, Pranay and Saurabh ponder over how the Indian Armed Forces can reduce the cost of pensions. And on Marathi Kirkiton, the Deshmukhs explore the works of the popular writer Ramchandra Chintaman Dere. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, please don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And remember, you can always check us out on YouTube. We have a number of channels. You can go to ivmpodcast.com/YouTube to take a look at what those channels are. We're also doing a small listener survey to understand how you respond to our shows and the advertising on the network. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It really helps us build better shows for you and understand what you're looking for from advertising and what we can talk to advertisers about who you are. Please go to ivmpodcast.com/survey. It really would help us out. Thank you so much. And finally, would like to thank our sponsors for the network this week: SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome to Shunya One, Adit. This is, like I said, we talk about entrepreneurship here, and I think you've had a sort of a whirlwind journey. I would say in terms of getting started, true to what you guys are building and what you stand for, I guess. So, as a background, why don't you just tell everyone listening in how exactly Zepto came to be, and let's say your own sort of personal journey, the 10-minute version, maybe.
Yeah, no. I think, and like I mentioned earlier, it's wonderful to be here. The story, I think, is not as exciting or inspiring as people might think. Right, both Keval and I, had come to Mumbai in the midst of the pandemic. Schools were locked down, colleges were locked down, and the two of us had a pretty long history of building. We both grew up in Dubai, and both originally from Mumbai, and so our families had a lot in common. And in fact, both our dads were engineers, so it clicked a little bit naturally. As kids, so we both used to build quite often. And when the two of us found ourselves in Bombay, as two close friends living in the same apartment, we pretty much said, at the time, the biggest problem that we had was getting groceries, right? So
Right.
the experience of like the other players out there at the time, might have taken 3 or 4 or 5 days at the minimum during the first wave of the pandemic to get groceries. And at the same time, the local stores, that was in a complete flux, right? And so for us, we came in and said, how do we actually build a product that can solve this? But it was less so out of the will to build a company. It was more so because we just wanted to build something interesting that people would enjoy using. And so that's how we started. We started delivering in about 45 minutes in our own neighborhood. And in fact, Kavali and I would
Yeah.
delivery partner number one and delivery partner number two, and it sort of
Wow.
scaled up
Oh,
from
nice.
there. So yeah, I think the journey to actually that this was sometime in August September 2020, and post that fact, the the journey of how we got from just delivering local goods ourselves and slowly scaling that in our neighborhood in Mumbai to actually starting Zepto formally. It's fairly interesting, right? We as this thing sort of slowly picked up, we decided we wanted to spend some time on it to see if we could actually take it somewhere interesting full time.
Hmm.
And eventually, what we realized, our journey to product market fit was a little bit more technical. Right? We, realized that, in a nutshell, the value proposition of delivering quickly had an incredible impact on retention cohorts, on the net promoter score that we were tracking, even on frequency of usage. We also saw that there were a lot of other, you know, I would say subsidiary benefits like freshness dynamics that we could manage a lot better
Yeah.
with rapid delivery, et cetera, et cetera. And so when we started scaling this initial 30 to 45 minute delivery service, we realized that product market fit wasn't as clear. We really weren't disrupting people's ways of buying groceries at the time until we started moving levers on delivery time and other levers as well on assortment, on freshness, and pricing. And so we for us it was just a matter of, hey, this is a problem that the two bachelors living in Mumbai in the middle of the pandemic had, which was getting groceries. And I think everybody had that experience. And
Yeah.
post that, it was sort of a more technical iteration through. I mean, we ended up on delivery time and all these other levers that I spoke about, but we tried multiple different things to get retention numbers up, to get the net promoter score at a exciting level before we said, what, this is an exciting business that can scale very aggressively. So that was the 2-3 minute journey of how we started Zepto and ended up here.
Awesome. And what you just said about getting technical as to that this can scale, that this can work, and obviously building it into a high growth startup that you guys are now today. Uh, what do you think what kind of difference in market factors actually allowed this to happen, right? I mean, beyond the pandemic where you identified the need, this is something which has been tried before, internationally is fairly prevalent, but a lot of it seems to have sort of snowballed now recently. I mean, especially with others also getting into this space, some of them even revisiting this space. So, what was that one sort of insight or a couple of insights that you said this is the time for this is now? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, again, to be very, very transparent with you, we were much more micro focused than we were macro focused. Right? I think there's
mhm.
a sense that people ask me, okay, how did you have this, vision that millions of people would use it like they are today, and how did you see that so clearly in the early days?
Yeah,
Transparently, in the early days, it was just Cavalier and I in front of our laptop saying, this is cool, let's try this, right?
yeah,
And just on a micro level, talking to one customer, two customers, three customers, probably a day. In fact, we were both delivery partners and customer support executives, all rolled into one, right? So we
yeah,
had that exposure to what individual people were experiencing, what they liked, what they didn't like, and we would sort of tinker our product based on the feedback that we had got on the ground, right, talking to real customers. So for us, it just became this element where, I guess, looking at it retroactively, we can say, you know, there was a lot more adoption and a lot more excitement around this because of COVID. There was also a lot more, excitement around convenience oriented grocery because e-commerce had become a lot more prevalent.
mm,
And I think this
yeah,
space has been tried before 5-6 years ago, where e-commerce would have been significantly smaller in India. The interesting fact about grocery as a category is that it's the most high trust category there is, right? And so for someone to actually get their groceries or their fruits and vegetables through a platform or even through an offline retail store, right? There has to be a certain amount of trust with the brand because this is in essence what I'm going to use to cook food at home for my
yeah,
family. And I
yeah,
think that in the early days, in say 2015, 2016, when this was tried, commerce online as a concept itself wasn't it wasn't in widespread comfort with sort of
yeah,
the Indian consumer. And so grocery was a notch too high, right? In that sense.
Right.
So I guess we could, looking at it today, those trends became apparent. But honestly, at the time, we had, again, no intention of starting a business. This was sort of a product that we enjoyed building, that scaled, and then that's when we sort of saw the opportunity to build a business. So yeah, I think that, fortunately, unfortunately, we lacked that sort of high level vision in the early days. That's now significantly more important in the late stage growth days. So yeah.
So, obviously you said this, that you built this incrementally, and, all of the data that you saw firsthand gave you more and more conviction as this came around. But there's also the interesting part of the journey where you went all the way to IC and, like really took this, let's say, head on, as a major league, product opportunity and market opportunity. So how did you have, like, talk about that a little bit, because you see most entrepreneurs, especially or first generation early stage entrepreneurs, sort of uh, build over a long time period and then sort of take these massive steps for growth, right? Whereas you guys, I think it's literally under what, 18 months that you have really jumped through the hoops, I would say. Whether you call it growth numbers, whether you call it funding, whether you call it your ambitions itself. uh, how was that, how did that conviction sort of build up so soon?
Yeah, I think so. We actually benefited from being, I would say, a wave three or a wave two technology company in India, and I
Yeah.
think this is sort of an interesting facet, or an interesting factor of an ecosystem maturing, the startup ecosystem maturing. Where if I had started, let's say, an e-commerce company 5, 6 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, the traditional paradigm would be, founders and a few junior folks scaling the company, and over time slowly building a management team. That management team also would still be a bit of a slow scale, because there would be no, like, 7, 8 years ago, no one had built a large technology company in India at the time, at least, right? Or very few people, with some minor exceptions. No one had built a really new age technology company
Yeah.
in India, and so most people had most people made a lot of mistakes. Right? There was no executive experience or talent that you could hire to say, how do I build an e-commerce company in India, or how do I build a this specific category in India.
Right.
What's interesting is that for us, the approach that we took was, we hired a very senior bench of, like, top executive talent very early on in our company's journey. So just at that post product market fit stage, and we actually started Zepto about 7 months ago. We were experimenting for about 18 months, but we formally launched Zepto about 7, 8 months ago in August of 2021. And for us, on the day that we were confident we had product market fit, we said, let's hire a phenomenal executive team. And what the interesting thing about that team, what it allowed us to go so fast and have such rigorous control on our business, is because that team, unlike, let's say, the commerce players and the technology companies that came before us, a lot of them had already seen the 0 to 1 journey, and then the 1 to 10 journey, and the 10 to 1,000 journey, right? And they had experienced it not only at larger companies, larger technology startups that are now sort of household names today, but they'd also experienced it at a very early stage, just when these companies were starting. So what we realized is that a lot of these executives knew exactly what the pitfalls are, exactly what the mistakes people make when they're building a company faster. And so the usual journey of scaling a company is, you get to a certain point, but then your systems, can't scale beyond that. They break. You have a lull period for a while. Fix your systems, scale to the next phase. Breaks, scale, fix your systems, scale to the next phase. For us, it was because we had a team that had experience, building out these large companies before. We were able to foresee a lot of those breaking points, right? And so preemptively, we solved those problems so that we could just have a smooth scale journey without any cracks in the middle. So that's one of the reasons why we were actually able to get from, let's say, zero to the scale that we're at today in 6 or 7 months, but it's taken, companies that came before us years to get to the scale, right?
Mm.
We've done it in, like, I think, some of the metrics that we have also, it surprises a lot of people, right? We've surpassed
Yeah.
incumbents that have, been around when I was 13, 14 years old. We've surpassed them in scale in 7 months because of the team that
Yeah.
that we brought on board. So yeah, that's, I think, probably the primary reason why. And frankly, it's a blessing to work with people every day that are an order of magnitude more intelligent than Kevali and I.
Wow. And that goes to show that you again like not just had conviction on the product and market fit, but also on the fact that you needed such a team to actually scale so fast. And congrats on identifying that and probably having the, let's say, humility for it as well, instead of being like a typical founder first and founder driven only company, as you
Yeah,
might
dude.
see.
I found that very interesting about India, and I don't have any thoughts on this as a positive or a negative, but there is this very interesting dynamic where the founders are glamorized, right? And it's
Yeah.
it's the company is the founder, which I think is frankly a little bit simplistic, right? At least in our case, I would consider that to be the reality. I think it's a lot more democratic in that sense. But I guess each to his own. But India does have this very interesting uh, obsession with the promoter or the founder, right? That one
Yeah.
visionary human being that takes it through. So
Yeah, I think it's to do with the fact that most founders are glamorized, like you just said, and more so because I think that's one of the things which people latch on to. We are call it maybe our Bollywood hangover or something like that. It's probably why until the idea or the product or the company itself sort of overtakes that. I think that's what you most people have to latch on to. But in your case again, to talk about actually the pace of execution, right? Given that you've done all of this, the actual execution also is something which you've managed to do just as as you were building as you were scaling. So uh, I, like you said, I saw Zepto, like myself as another Mumbai guy. I actually saw the hoarding first, and then I think I simultaneously saw the newspaper in it, simultaneously saw ads. It's like it's been that fast, and I've obviously used the product and service, and it just works. So, what's tell us a little bit about how the scaling went under the hood, right? Beyond just, let's say,
yeah,
team and all of that, but under the hood, it's a massive logistics company. Uh,
yeah.
it's a supply chain in itself. So, tell us a little bit about those aspects as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and you're right. Right, I think it's what I say is that this business is probably an order of magnitude more complex than the traditional marketplace business or traditional, let's say, consumer transactional business out there. Right? It's a highly ops intensive business that requires a lot of attention to detail. In in the way that we scale this business, I mean, just to again leave out sort of the high level yarn and just talk about how that actually played out. We launched our first micro market in Bandra in Bombay, right? And
Yeah.
this was pretty much in July, August, and we scaled Bandra itself without much marketing. Although we had a hoarding, that frankly was a
Yeah.
mistake, right? We didn't get much traction from that, but very quickly you know the first five customers organically turned into 10, organically turned into 30, and Bandra started hitting capacity, the capacity that we had planned for, let's say, 6 months from its launch to
Yeah.
coming down to 6 weeks, right? So we were
Wow. Yeah.
concerned but excited at the same time, saying that this the magic that we were hoping for it just exploded, right? And when we saw
Yeah.
sort of the organic traffic, we were excited. When we saw the retention rates, again, we were very excited, and NPS scores, we were very excited. Now we basically said, frankly, at the time, we were pretty much managing the entire thing, right? And Kevali and I and Vinay, our chief operating officer, there were many orders that we packed ourselves, helped
Mhm.
deliver ourselves. So we said, okay, how do we design this to be scalable, right? And at the time, we pretty much lived and worked in the delivery centers itself. So what we would do is we took a lot of the processes that let us do these things efficiently and fast, design them into written SOPs very quickly, and we have like a huge bank of SAPs, right? SOPs,
Yeah.
right? That is not exciting or fun or visionary. It's very technical and boring and requires a lot of heavy process management. But we took the pain to write that down, and we tried implementing it in our second micro market, which was Marol and Dairy East, without
Mhm.
any intervention from ourselves, and that worked really well. But then when at that point we were in observation mode, And again, now we had shifted our office from the Bandra micro market to the Marol micro market. We pretty much
Yeah.
lived, ate, and slept there. And this time we were in observation mode. So without any intervention from ourselves, could our packers and riders get this done just on the SOPs that we built out? And we realized that actually no, that wasn't the case initially. So the from when we had personally done orders to when it was sort of more on autopilot, the NPS was lower initially and the retention was lower initially, and then we started designing more and more SOPs to cover the gaps that we were observing. Eventually, we got to a point where the fulfillment of the order was pretty airtight, right? We had pretty much
Mhm.
lived there, worked on it for more than 2 months, and the fulfillment itself, every order, the way that we built our process was in my opinion was beautiful, right? And not only did it give a phenomenal customer experience where we were just able to maintain our marketing and scores at 80 points and 60% month-on buyer retention. Not only was that that happening, but we saw counterintuitively is that the faster we were doing these deliveries, the faster that we were packing these orders, the more efficient and cheaper it got, right? Because
Yeah.
effectively you can do more orders per hour per rider, or pack more or orders per packer if you give them the tools to actually do it in a short period of time. So we were pretty happy with that, the fulfillment side. Then we started scaling fairly aggressively initially in Bombay, right? So we started launching more and more micro markets, and started building the team in parallel, right? So this is when we had brought on board a you know a head of real estate and expansion. We had brought on board a head of and obviously finance clearly, and we also started hiring very early on for HR and other roles because we saw the team expanding pretty
Yeah.
quickly, and we realized that potentially this is this is a function that will blow up if we're not careful,
Right.
right? Because we
Right.
as operators, we didn't have much experience there. So we ended up getting to a position where we had scaled pretty rapidly in Mumbai, getting to scale that surpassed a lot of folks that were there much earlier than we were, right? With different
Yeah.
models, but in the same
Yeah.
space. And that's when things started breaking again on the supply chain at scale, and that's when we started realizing that there was a lot more work to be done with at scale back end, the back end supply chain. Right? So how do we actually streamline, how do we streamline fruits and vegetables quality control? How do we streamline expiry across the city to make sure that customers don't receive expired products, etc., etc. Right? And that's when as we scaled, sort of the problems became bigger, but also more manageable, right? Because it was with the existing infrastructure that we had,
Yeah.
and because it was so airtight, it was a lot easier to add augmentations to the existing system that helped solve problems at scale across an entire city. Right? And so this happened very quickly. I mean, largely also due to the fact that we were marketing aggressively, but we saw a huge amount of organic traffic as well. So we scaled quickly. We encountered these problems quickly, and we were able to solve them quickly because we had such a solid base that we had built
Nice.
ourselves. And yeah, I mean, eventually that became a solid playbook for us to launch cities, and now we're live in 9 cities across the country. Bombay, Bangalore, Delhi, Gurgaon, Noida, Hyderabad, Chennai, Pune, and Kolkata. And yeah, and I
Wow.
think that was that was, I think, frankly, unknowingly or knowingly, was probably the most pure and efficient way to build this business in a short period of time, right? Going from zero, with one small presence in Bandra
Yeah.
to pan India metro presence in 7 months has been crazy, but it wouldn't have been
Incredible.
possible, yeah, without this process.
No, it's incredible. And the way you put it, I think not only did you do a few things which are, let's say, non-traditional, you built a startup first in Bombay and not in Bangalore, but you also, like you said, you basically made it so that it could be this cookie cutter model of do what works in like this micro environment and this micro location, and then just replicate it elsewhere without actually looking outside of what works. Like you made it hunkered down on the process, locked it down, and then just
Yeah.
replicated. Uh,
And I think what I'll add there is where we really, and what's really helping us today as well. The culture that we had built in the early days was one of high willingness to get your hands dirty, and a high willingness to like go into the finest detail without any ego, right? I'm the CEO. I
Yeah.
can't be getting into how the handover process is for every order for a rider, right? But that's what we literally used to do. And I think the benefit of having a senior leadership team with you on day one, right? We had our chief marketing officer, chief operating officer, chief financial officer, multiple other really senior folks that were top leaders at some pretty large companies in India, Flipkart, uh, you know Pepperfry, Farm Easy, multiple other great companies.
Yeah.
When bringing on board these senior leaders and having them build with us in the early days, it's giving them perspective today, even at a scale of let's say 2,000, 3,000x of where we were a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
It's given them perspective to say that if there's a problem at this specific micro market in Manikonda or Hyderabad, I don't mind going there myself and fixing it. And that's something that I wouldn't trade for the world, right? The kind
Nice.
of get your hands dirty element to it. So, unfortunately, it was not as exciting as people might imagine. Where there's a again visionary founder says, "Let's go full charge." It was more like me having to travel. When we wanted to launch in Bangalore, I took a red eye flight to Bangalore and literally went to landlords, negotiated the prices with
Mm.
them, to every 1,000 rupee, and said, "Listen, we need to open this micro market as soon as possible." Right? And we need office space, etc. Negotiating with the landlords there. That used to be pretty much done by us in the senior leadership team. Right? So it was literally like a very hands-on scaling of the business, which made us make sure that we weren't drinking our own Kool-Aid. Right? We were
Yeah.
very much in touch with what was going on. Uh, so I think that's probably the best way to scale, right? Without any crazy high-level vision and just with sort of a more
Yeah.
on the ground
Iterative.
what the hell is going on. Yeah.
No, very cool. On that note, I'm going to take a quick break before we get into a little more detail and come back and talk again.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Advertising is Dead, Varun talks to co-founder and CEO of Yoga Bar, Suhasini Sampath. She shares the secrets behind making energy bars without preservatives. On Voices for Water, Karthik asks Dr. Bhakti Devi, founding president Water Resources Council, about water literacy in India. On Ek Chuski Finance, Priyanka explains the concept of a financial slam book. On Pulyabazi, Pranay and Saurabh ponder over how the Indian armed forces can reduce the cost of pensions. And on Marathi Kirkiton, the Deshmukhs explore the works of the popular writer Ramchandra Chintaman Dere. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, please don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And remember, you can always check us out on YouTube. We have a number of channels. You can go to ivmpodcast.com/YouTube to take a look at what those channels are. We're also doing a small listener survey to understand how you respond to our shows and the advertising on the network. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It really helps us build better shows for you and understand what you're looking for from advertising and what we can talk to advertisers about who you are. Please go to ivmpodcast.com/survey. It really would help us out. Thank you so much. And finally, would like to thank our sponsors for the network this week, SBI Life Insurance, India Water Portal, and Jupiter, a digital banking app. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Adit, you've obviously been sharing a lot on the hyper, let's say, growth journey that you've had, and how, in spite of it, looking from the outside, like some uh, crazy plan that you guys had all figured out from day one, which you just sort of executed on. The reality, obviously, we know is like a lot of iterative execution. Uh, but even getting into, let's say, the details of the why people accepted this so much, right? And maybe flipping on the consumer side as well. Uh, what do you think caused people to love and get addicted to this? Is that something which is which you see? Are you seeing any difference as you expand? Because let's say Bandra, Bombay, all the sort of early adopter markets in your case, maybe there was some amount of, I would say, relevance to people there, where grocery matters, home delivery was sort of prevalent from other grocery stores and local kirana stores. There's always some element of home delivery which existed. Uh, but in all the other cities that you just spoke about, what was the, let's say, state of the art that you were really improving on, or what do you see a difference? as you go about to each new place, or is human behavior the same everywhere, that once you get addicted, you just keep wanting it more and more?
Frankly, what we realized is that our first city, Bombay, was one of the slowest to scale. When we launched this in other cities, Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai, it blew up even faster. Maybe you could also argue
Wow.
that it was because we had a lot more clarity on how to scale and how to build it with the right quality controls in place. But we were shocked, right, when we launched in uh, Bandra and Varol and all these other areas. We were like, okay,
Yeah.
things are going well. Let's start putting our hands into other markets. And initially, it was a bit more of a cautious approach. But when we saw the
Yeah.
reaction other markets, we went, "Oh my God, this is crazy! Let's just
Yeah.
go everywhere!" Right? And for us, the consumer need, and I think a lot of people ask me this question, and I find it pretty, I find it pretty interesting. Right? Um, the question is always, how many people really need 10-minute
Yeah.
delivery, and what's actually the value proposition out of it. First, for me, I always find that a very funny question, because now we're doing millions of orders every month, and we've got, I think, close to 2 million customers already, with a 60% retention rate, an 88 point NPS. I just look at the numbers and I say, compare that to
Yeah.
any consumer transactional platform in India's history, and you'll find the product market fit and the stickiness metrics to be through the roof. Right? So,
Yeah.
to me, it's a very philosophical 180 character discussion on Twitter, and the numbers
Yeah.
are another case. But because people like pushing me to say, Aadit, sometimes maybe your company's too numbers oriented. Give us a little bit of the story. So I say,
Yeah.
okay, fine, fair enough. I'll tell you why people are enjoying Zepto. So 10-minute delivery, I'll tell you very, very honestly as well. Our median delivery time is less than 9 minutes. So we could very easily say 9-minute delivery, right? And we
Yeah.
could be intellectually honest about it. But we don't say that, right? Because for us, the words 10-minute delivery is a very clear cut through on what we do and what we're delivering to customers. It's a sweet and concise and
Yeah.
neat
Simple.
way to just, yeah, it's simple. It's a very neat way to communicate to a customer. This is the value that you're going to get. Right? This is what Zepto is all about in one line, which I think most brands don't have the luxury of doing. Right? If I was a real estate company, what am I going to communicate? Right? It's very
Yeah.
difficult to say this is our value proposition. So we have that uh, conciseness, and that actually really helps with customer acquisition costs, with brand recall numbers that we track pretty aggressively. So we see that as 10-minute delivery being a brand cut through, and a very serious value add. But what we've noticed is that people come to Zepto and they initially they would need something urgently, right? So you've heard about Zepto at some party, or from some friend. It's sort of stored in the back of your mind. 1 week later, you might urgently need soap, for example. Right? You've run out of soap, you want to take a shower, and you say, you know what, I'm going to order on Zepto, and hey, there are also snacks here, so let me just figure this out. And the ETA is 8 minutes. No way, right? That's not going
Mm.
to happen. So
Yeah.
you place the order, shows up in 8 minutes, you freak out, and after
Yeah.
that, that's the experience from that point onwards is exciting. But what we've seen is that customers come for that 10-minute delivery brand cut through, but they stay because the freshness, for example, the freshness numbers that we have on, let's say, the fruits and vegetables that we deliver, or the bread or the milk, etc., we're sitting on an 81 point NPS for fresh products, which is higher than pretty much any option out there for grocery online or offline, right? And so that's
Mm.
that's one beautiful thing. People love the products that they get in terms of freshness. The second piece that people love is the fact that if you order on other platforms, you might order 10 SKUs. It might even take 24 hours to come, but 7 of them might show up, right? And 3 of them
Mm.
might not show up. And that sometimes happens pretty frequently with online grocery. For us, we have a 99.8% accuracy rate, which means when you order, you get exactly what you ordered, which is also a beautiful experience. So when we look at Zepto, it's multiple things coming together for us, right? It's the the fact that it comes in 10 minutes. You get the freshness that you would probably not get in many other offline or online channels, and it's exactly what you ordered. So the way we summarize it, it's
Yeah.
exactly what you need, exactly the freshness that you like, exactly when you want it, which is instantly. So that's those three things coming together is just what I like to call seamless grocery delivery. Right? So like at Zepto, we're not a 10-minute delivery company. We're a seamless delivery company. And then it,
Yeah.
it comes into these multiple factors. at once, which really boils down to the core product market fit. So that's why people use Zepto. 10 minutes is great. In fact, when you ask customers, is it okay if we deliver is it okay if we deliver in 20 or 25 minutes, they say no. And we've seen our retention and NPS numbers drop. Although people on Twitter might say that, right? The
Yeah.
interesting thing that we've noticed is that nobody needs a 10-minute delivery until you need something. Then you need it in 10
Yeah.
minutes, right? And
Exactly.
it's very interesting. My but for us, it's a question that we would have had maybe the first time we were drawing this idea up on the whiteboard and we were figuring out what logo our app should have. But today, when we have sort of the statistics, behind us on retention, on net promoter score, on frequency of usage, on organic traffic and acquisition, it's just sort of a fun
Yeah.
philosophical party conversation, but it doesn't really make sense when you look at the numbers, right? So yeah.
Yeah, the numbers just explain itself, which is awesome, right? Which is what you want, and obviously, kudos to you guys cracking that. Given the kind of space that this now what you're explaining, again, every question hereafter might seem philosophical in one sense, but uh, as you look at the data more and more, obviously there's a lot of scaling you guys will do, whether it's building your locations, what you on the back end side, the logistics, the dark stores, and all of those things, the which go into, let's say, uh, providing the fulfillment side of things. But what are you seeing as far as trends on actual, like frequency of use you mentioned is really high. Do people need things every day for in 10 minutes? Do people need things? Is it, if I may compare with, let's say, the other most common delivery frequency, which is food, right? Food delivery has been around in India for a while now. It's established, it's like highly competitive. uh, you can, the holy grail is order every meal on your favorite food delivery app, right? So what's the holy grail for you, or for an individual consumer in your case? Like, is it order how often? What is it? Have you thought of that as a metric?
Yeah, I think for us on frequency of usage, we see for mature customers 2 to 3 times a week, which is best in class from other consumer transaction apps, and that's on average. Right? We've got people that order every day. We've got people that order 5-6 times a week. But even taking into account the least frequent customers, right, our average across the board for people that have been around on the platform for a significant amount of time, let's say 3 months or 4 months, those guys order 2 to 3 times a week, right? And that for us is very exciting. If you look at, let's say, the global comparables that we have on Q-commerce, we've seen frequency usually stabilize around once a week for the global comps on Q-commerce. And we're pretty, I mean, it's pretty interesting in India, right? Because we see a higher frequency than other markets, because I think most Indians get their groceries from that, multiple times a week
Yeah.
trip, that they pick up. Just sort of here and there, they might get some Maggie noodles. Here or there, they might get some milk. Here or there, they might get some meat from another shop. And that, I think, behavior trend is something that's very conducive to Q-commerce, which is why I also talk, when I talk to people, American investors, and I talk to other foreign investors, they find out to be crazy, right? Because we learn that structurally this is the kind of market that really does buy groceries at a much higher frequency than, let's say, the Americans or the Europeans, right? And
Yeah.
that's something that makes this a lot more exciting, because for us, our CAC to LTV actually plays out a lot better than the historicals on not only food delivery, but also on Q-commerce globally.
Yeah, and that's an interesting take, right? Because like you said, maybe Indians were already used to buying 2 3 times from their local kirana, or local, even the sabji, grocery vegetables guy. So how does that impact, let's say, your scaling plans? Or as closing notes, where do you go from here? Is it just more, let's say, same, the is this are you going to be the McDonald's of, let's say, quick commerce, where you just like roll out, and there's a dark store in every corner, Zepto is all over the place? Or is there more nuance that you're discovering as you go along, and changing your game plans?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and for us right now, we are in that aggressive expansion phase, and I think it's a great time to be the CEO of this company. Frankly, I'm very, very lucky to be doing what I do every day. Also because, like you mentioned, most companies go through very, very painful cycles in the early days, take a lot longer time to get to this scale. the fact that we've gotten here and we're still going at the pace that we are is just sort of something that I'm grateful for every day. In terms of the in terms of the plans going forward, look, we're quite ambitious, right? So first, we think that this opportunity in and of itself is going to be much larger than most consumer transactional apps, right? My high level thought process is that, look, if you look at food delivery, and which is a large opportunity, and there have been great companies built in that space. If you look at food delivery, though, the frequency of usage, the average revenue per user that you get there versus what you get on a grocery delivery platform, the grocery delivery platform takes the cake, right? Because people buy an order of magnitude more groceries than they buy outside food.
Yeah.
And that's something that's exciting. So we can build a company conceivably multiples bigger than other opportunities in food delivery, right? And I think people are obviously taking notice of that, which is why the space is as is as engaged and has as many players as it does, right? Because people realize that the market here is unbelievably large. So we are in that aggressive expansion mode because we think that facing what we're building can be huge. Right? Grocery in India, online grocery in India has been tried, has been tested. There has been some, I would say, medium success in this space. Where this, I think, space being one of the largest, markets in the country should be sort of an outsized outcome, right? one of the interesting things that's been told to me by folks in the e-commerce space is that all the other categories of e-commerce combined, fashion, electronics, etc., combine all of them together, and they're just roughly equal to the size of grocery, right? Because grocery is just a much bigger market from a consumer lens, so and a consumer spending lens. So we think in and of itself there's a very large opportunity building what we're building, which is sort of the seamless way to get groceries, and I think that's the need of the hour. But beyond that, we think that the use case that we're pioneering is also very exciting, right? Across the board, there can be multiple different implementations of it. I know there are people pinging me about, let's say, can we do this for food delivery? Can we do this for other kind of opportunities? My thought process is that the answer is probably yes, and we think that there's there are exciting verticals to be built across the board with Q-commerce, and it's not just sort of a one vertical play. That being said, we our core philosophy right now is let's just stay as focused as possible on having sort of the huge opportunity in front of us and nailing that. And we think that once we're in a commanding position there, which is seeming more and more likely by the day, we'll be in a position where the other verticals that we can expand Q-commerce into will be much easier. So our thought process is let's not lose focus. Let's keep our eye on the ball because the ball is massive. And once we have conquered that opportunity, we'll start looking at other exciting use cases beyond it. But frankly, I think you'll find Q-commerce changing quite a lot quite quickly. And we're excited to be part of that future.
That's awesome. I mean, as closing notes, Adit, I mean, you've obviously scaled the company amazing in these officially 7 months. What are your immediate, let's say, goals? Do you want to do a shout out? Are you guys hiring? Are you guys looking for interesting folks to join your team? Or obviously, and where can folks reach you? Like people who are listening to this podcast, what's the best way to reach you? Like you said, you've had some fun Twitter conversations, but what's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, and honestly, I need to be more active on Twitter, and I think that's something that a lot of founders ping me about, saying, "Dude, what are you doing?" Right? If you don't have Twitter, you don't exist in the Indian ecosystem, especially being someone that's based out of Bombay and not Bangalore, right?
Yeah, Bombay community is tighter on Twitter,
yeah,
for sure.
It's a little bit tighter, but in terms of our immediate goals right now, we are hiring very aggressively. So please do reach out. You can find all available opportunities at zeptonow.com. So do check that out, and do reach out for roles across the board, because we are hiring very aggressively, and frankly we are in a position where given the value that we've created over the past few months, the value that we're giving employees as well, not just in compensation but also in terms of opportunities, is great. Right? Frankly, the best thing in a company that grows so fast is that if the company is growing 1,000 or 2,000% year on year, you can't expect your career to also grow at a traditional trajectory, right? You have a different level of career growth where we've seen people that would have taken years to get to certain positions scale much faster at a company like ours. So if that does sound exciting to you and you want to be a part of that, do check out zeptonow.com and our team will reach out to you soon. But thanks again. It's been wonderful being here, and I really appreciate the time.
No, thank you so much, Adit, and more power to you and the team to keep the massive pace of execution going. And I love that you said that ultimately it boils down to the numbers on everything, and it's great to see that real businesses are being built in contrast to a lot of other businesses you see where the numbers don't always show up so soon, at least if I may say so simply. But thank you so much for being here, and for everyone listening, of course. If you love the podcast, please do share and give us some feedback and give us some ratings wherever you're listening to this. And Adit, we will keep seeing Zepto going places and getting us our stuff sooner and sooner, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. See you guys.
Bye bye. Thank you so much.